Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this collaboration between Al Furqan and Sanzaf as we peel back the layers of someone who has trodden deep footprints in our community. So we welcome Sheikh Shamiel. I'm Abdulaziz Madat, and we'll be in conversation and look at the person behind the Imam and away from the Mimbar this afternoon on this Heritage Day instead. Sheikh, we all know you as the person from Masjid al-Taqwa. Tell us a little bit about those days, and we want to go back prior to the Duplicity Street years. I know we're going back, for those who don't know, 1964. What are the first memories that come to mind?
Yes, obviously I was born in Causton, in Gatley Street, where the current butchery is, the Lahey's butchery is. On that particular spot, that is where I was born, Alhamdulillah. Very young, but I can remember the Salis that lived 2 doors away from us, Hussein Sali, Yusuf Sali, them. And I also knew what was happening in and around Causton. My granny had their first shop in Causton. Ahmad Jardin was teaching in Causton. Khala Ben was teaching in Causton. And Causton was our center of PE. All our shopping was done there, whether it was Amli's or McCann's or American wholesalers. That's where we did our shopping for Eid. That is where we gathered on the December holidays, or the, as they say, Ouyar's aunt. That was, and then Alhamdulillah, we've moved to 1969. We moved to Galvin Park, and I think here is where I became very involved with the community from that very young age. Because Alhamdulillah, through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the madrasa in Galvin Park was at my uncle's house in Rifle Crescent. Muhsin Panday, our first ustaz was Tafati Abadar, and the next ustaz was a person known as Khalifa Musa.
Okay.
And he obviously also, he was living in Acadia at the time, but he also moved to Causton thereafter. And I was witness to my father's particularly working, and my grandfather, at building Masjid al-Taqwa, which I can clearly remember me also sometimes going to the site with my father, whether it was to clean bricks or whatever it was that I had to do. And that is my involvement with the masjid. And Aji Yusuf Panday, my uncle, was also the chair of the trust. And he always used to say, Shamiel, I want you to do this, Shamiel, I want you to do that. As a youngster even, I remember me having to go around and selling those books that Masjid al-Taqwa published with its opening. Then I had to sell those books on the day of the opening of the masjid.
Those were still written by Sheikh Jamil.
That was written by Sheikh Jamil.
So what were those first influences, Sheikh, as a child, as a youngster, that you can remember?
It's actually being present with the building of the masjid. I can remember that. I can remember the opening of the masjid. More, not what was happening inside, but me selling the books. And then afterwards, I became involved with the Jama'ah. In 1975, we attended the Chatsworth Ijtima, way back. And we were, myself, MP Abrams, Maraban, Sheikh Mukhtar Raban's father, and then Fuad, I think his surname was Norship, and myself, we went to the Durban Ijtima.
So what was it that drove you, if one could use that word, or influenced you to go into the field, the deen?
Most definitely the Jama'ah. Most definitely. That was where I got my first inspiration. And also, living in Duplicity Street, a very popular street in terms of leadership. Imam Fuad Japi hails from Duplicity Street. Imam Sadaka Abadar hails from Duplicity Street. Sheikh Jamil Jardin, Sheikh Majidi Jardin, Imam Adli Jardin hails from Duplicity Street.
I think you're getting someone around the corner.
Hafiz Majidi.
Majidi's father.
Hafiz Majidi, Sheikh Jamil. Yes, and then obviously
Asham.
Aisham, yes. Aisham and Antitukhida. They had a great influence, and we used to attend madrasa in Sheikh Shamiel's garage, and I can actually remember the seating of that particular madrasa, the ladies being on the right-hand side, left-hand side, the men being on the right-hand side, I Khafsa Kaji, Haji Tukhida, of the many people that attended, and I Ahmad Davids, Imam Ali Davids, the Ahmad, the Akhi Davids, they were all those who attended. You know, I think I saw your father also at one of these madrasas, if I can remember correctly.
Okay. So your dad, I know he played as well, like all our fathers, they played quite an influential role. What can you remember? What were the things that you can take, the lessons that you would heed from your dad?
Alhamdulillah, my father and Sheikh Shamiel did hifz together at Ayman. My father was 14 juz Hafiz, and thereafter he had to leave, obviously, school because he had to once again care for his mother at that particular time. You know, in the 60s, in our generation and the generation before that, if a child came of age where he could earn, then he was sent to go and work as a necessary obligation at the time.
Ambach.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
And your mom's mom, the influence your mother had on you?
My mother's family from the Kafar side had a lot of great influence on me. My mother's maternal ancestry comes from the family known as the Abdul Ghaffar Saval family. The Abdul Ghaffar Saval family then in turn became the Abduls, the Kafars, and the Savals. And that was one watched him away from the Abu Rafi and the Abu Salih. Right? But they were all intimately linked. And then obviously my mother's brother, Haji Hanif Kafar, is the father of Hashimiya Kafar and Aisha Kafar. He had a great influence on me as well. Right? He was, because my father worked out of town a lot of the times, he was always there to encourage us, etc. And he also had a great influence.
If there was something you wanted your grandchildren, and especially your children, to remember of your dad and your mom, what would that be?
Khairul Qawmi Khadimuhum. The best of humanity is those that are willing to serve humanity. And I grew up in a home where that was a normal part of the activities. My mother was intimately involved with the community organizations at the time, especially fundraising for Masjid al-Taqwa. And my father, being a mason that he was, he used to build weekends. And Alhamdulillah, I hope that I did take that example from my parents and served the community in various other ways. I was involved in the building of Masjid al-Sabirin, in the madrasa of Masjid al-Taqwa, and also various other projects. We did change the roof in Rudolph Street. At once I was very much involved with that. Masjid Mansour was very much involved with that as well. Alhamdulillah, to the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would tell my children, my grandchildren, that the life that Allah gives us must be spent in serving the community. That is what's going to count for us in our qabr. How much time did you give to your masjid, to your madrasa, to the organization that serves you? And that is what I want them to remember.
Talking about serving, Sheikh, your wife, Suraya, she's born you 2 sons and a daughter. And Alhamdulillah, grandchildren, and I know our children is always a soft spot. But once again, I always know that there's a lot of sacrifice our wives make. What is the one endearing quality that you feel, is something that you really appreciate?
Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward my wife very well for all the support that she has given me throughout my life. From the very beginning of our marriage, my honeymoon was spent in SANZAF offices in Cape Town. And that is a sacrifice. Getting married on the Sunday and having to report for duty by Shawkat Muqaddam on the Tuesday took a lot of sacrifice. And she never ever complained. That was in 1988. 1989, I took Hujjaj for Hajj 4 months. 1990, I took Hujjaj for Hajj 4 months. And as well as in 92, I had to go and study. Sheikh Shamiel encouraged me to do a dawrah, or he told me, in the one sentence, you must do a dawrah in Cairo, and I did that dawrah. It was for 4 months, and she never ever complained. And throughout our marriage life, whether it was Palestine trips or Syria trips or Gaza trips or Hajj trips or Umrah trips. She never ever stood in my way. She just always used to say, make dua for me when you're at the sacred places.
Sheikh, your children, Khalil, eldest one, Kauthar, and then there's your youngest son,
Taha.
Taha. What is there about them that, you know, makes you feel warm inside, that you feel, look, I think I've done my bit? Is there anything specific about your children that you feel?
Yes, Alhamdulillah. Remember, my children grew up with an absent father, because basically my time had to be given to the masjid, right? During the week I had no time. Weekends, it was the beginning stages of Khalil's soccer career. You know that his mother took him to a lot of the matches, right? And I need to really thank my children for having developed normally, naturally, without, you know, becoming rebels in any way whatsoever. Alhamdulillah, they developed, and I'm proud of the Muslims that they are today, even though I was an absent father.
Sheikh, any business unfinished, Islamically speaking? Or as a father that you feel, you know, now I know you've gone into retirement, but sometimes we feel, you know, there's unfinished business.
Yes. Look, I didn't give my children all the attention that I should have. I now want to direct my attention to my grandchildren. I would like to sit with them and let them do the Quran, but I didn't have this opportunity with my own children. I had to depend on the schools, Nasruddin, the Al-Azhar. I depended on them for the Dini development of their studies. Now I would like to do this for my grandchildren. That's the only unfinished business I really have. And obviously, before becoming Imam at Masjid al-Taqwa, we had a very big, viable, strong madrasa in Salt Lake. My dream is I'd like to go back there to Salt Lake and still see what I can do, what contribution I can make towards an adult class. Because there were times then our adult classes were in excess of 100 people attending on a particular Monday night or Wednesday night.
Sheikh, before our time runs out, you know, I think we all reflect on our life. Is there anything that you can think of, you know, that it says to you, wow, you know, this I did well? Any such moments that you can think of?
Alhamdulillah. Look, one of my biggest advocacies was, first and foremost, in the beginning, was zakah, the importance of zakah, and how the welfare and the growth of a community is dependent upon how they pay their zakah. If they deny the zakah to the poor, the community will not prosper. And if the zakah is sorted out, alhamdulillah, the community, if they don't sort it out, then the community is not going to grow. And the community is going to fail. That is the one thing. The second is my advocacy for Palestine. That is something as a child, I didn't really grow up knowing the difference between Palestine and Israel. I didn't know what was the various human rights wrongs, or for want of a better word, you know, that what's happening in Palestine. And I advocated that as soon as I came into the imamate. That was one of the things that I advocated a lot in the masjid. And we became aware then of the plight of the Palestinian people.
Just as a reminder, Sheikh, in terms of that connection between Sanzef and yourself, you were the second?
Yes, I was the first the person who established the office of Sanzef in Port Elizabeth. Prior to me moving the office, for want of a better word, I was part of the Eastern Cape Islamic Congress. The Eastern Cape Islamic Congress had a welfare department, and they had a Baitul Mal department. And that was run respectively by Dr. Amin Badin and Imam Jalal Ismail. May Allah SWT grant Imam Jalal Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. And Dr. Amin his strength and his health to still continue serving. But that was the status quo. And being in Congress at the time, it was between myself and Shahid Kaji, and there was Rashad Davids, and also Dr. Maili Jakut. We felt that there was a need to take our Baitul Mal and our social welfare fund to make them grow. And the only way we could achieve that growth was to actually link up with a national organization. And that's when we linked up. And I need to also, may Allah subhanahu reward all those who served on the Eastern Cape Islamic Congress, on the Baitul Mal Fund, on the social welfare. May Allah subhanahu grant him Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la, inshallah. They did the sterling work. We were the first in South Africa. We were the first organized Baitul Mal, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So another first, Sheikh, I think another first, and I think that's something to be proud of.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Sheikh, shukran to you for your time as we sign off Al Furqan and Senzef, this collaboration on this Heritage Day. We wish you well for the years going forward, Sheikh. I know it's a new chapter that we're going into, and I think it's something we need to explore again. You know, those hobbies that you're going to take up and how you will be spending your time other than with the grandchildren. But shukran to you, Sheikh, for your time.
Okay. Also, shukran to you, Aziz, for granting us this opportunity to speak about what we did in the past. And also, I want to say shukran to Al Furqan for also making a difference in the community. Alhamdulillah.